Hello. I'm going to, make a video in English. Maybe the only video on this channel that's going to be English. But I just want to, share some thoughts on what darksydephil has said in the past, or actually very recently. Maybe as recent as maybe last week. Okay. And I remember he has said something similar, along the same vein of thoughts in the past. Also pretty recent, maybe like half a year ago. Okay, so it's like a recurring opinion from Phil. But I don't think like a lot of people has picked up on that particular opinion from Phil. And I find that kind of interesting that he would still hold this kind of like thought and opinions on that matter. So that that's why I want to make this video. So first of all, I don't really watch Phil's contents. I just I don't watch like streamers. I play games, but I don't like to like watch people streaming games. Okay, so most of my info, most of my you know intel on Phil, come from Snort Banal. Okay, I love that guy's, or if maybe not a guy, a girl. I love their contents. I think like every single video from that channel is very entertaining. Especially with like all the mix up of his past clips. Uh, like every single day doing commute, I would just like turn on my phone and start playing like not his their most recent videos. It's just very entertaining. Uh, so so one of the things I noticed uh, maybe 2 weeks ago is when Phil made a comment or made a rant about how he's not poor, and right at that moment, I just remembered something he said half a year ago, and that's when he made a comment about he does not go to Walmart. I think he said something specifically like, "Oh, I don't mind other people to go to Walmart to buy groceries, but I personally would not go to Walmart. I refuse." I remember he said he used a specific word, refuse. I refuse to go to Walmart. Okay, and that's my personal choice. Okay, so I just I think it's a very interesting thing to say. Especially from his situation, from his perspective, and all that. Um, you know, First of all, him making a statement about him not being poor is very interesting. Okay, and I'm really interested in knowing like how he defines being poor is, because from my perspective, when I watch when I watch you know obviously not his content but the Snort Banal's content, but still when I learn about this guy, and I've been watching Snort Banal for like at least 5 years, if not longer. You know, and I've been following Phil since he was back in Connecticut, when the first drama I think, or the first time that people start turning against him was with when he started dating Panda Lee, and his fans didn't really like Panda Lee's presence when he's playing games. And I remember back then he made like a video like just like fucking bashing his fans who spoke against Panda Lee. Okay, so that was like how long I've been following Phil's saga. Okay, all right, sorry about that. I got a phone call from work. Um, um, but I was saying that I've been following Phil's different sagas, different story arcs like all these years. So I'm not like completely uninformed about Phil's situation. Um, uh, and which leads back to like what I was saying before. I'm very interested in knowing like how Phil defines what being poor is, because you know from my perspective, from my understanding, he fits like every single definition of being poor out there. Okay, you know, he went bankrupt a few years ago. Okay, and now his financial situation is that he's still in that redeeming phase. Whatever the proper financial term is, but he's in that redeeming phase after bankruptcy, meaning that he has no credits. He cannot use his credit card. Okay, um, and on top of that, he has a house. He has mortgage to pay every single month. For the Seattle's property, I don't even know what's happening with that Connecticut property. Maybe it got foreclosed. Maybe he's still paying money for that. I don't know. I don't know about the situation over there. Didn't really keep up to date on that part of his financial situation. Um, Actually, speaking of the financial situation, he may want to go to that financial audit podcast by what's that guy's name? I forgot. But he has so maybe he's not having paying anything to Connecticut, but he has a mortgage, a house mortgage. He has crazy expensive internet bills. Okay, I just recently found out that he actually has two high-end computers to do this streaming thing. One for playing games and one for recording. I mean, that's just crazy to me. Um, Especially as someone who's very anti-consumerism. Like I every time, like right now, like the computer I own is like probably around $800, and that's like the most expensive computer that I've ever bought. All the computers that I owned before, I just walk into Best Buy and tell them, hey, give me something that just for work, like no whistles, no bells, no anything. And I've been using that for like the last 60 years. So it's just crazy to me that people will spend so much money on computers, on cars, on everything else. But again, that's some personal story. That's a different story for a different day. But so he has two high-end computers, crazy expensive internet bills, and I'm sure he has like other bills and expenses that he needs to pay every single month. And the important thing is that he doesn't have like a reliable source of income. His income, his money, his earning depends every single day from his streaming and aka begging, right? That's not a reliable source of income, especially for him. He's not a successful YouTuber. He's not a successful streamer anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, he's making crazy amount of money from YouTube, but not anymore. So he's like living not just like paycheck by paycheck. He's living like day by day, and and relying on people's donations, right? So that's to me, that's like he fits every single definition for being poor, right? I mean, like the only thing that's worse than that is being homeless. On like you know I don't know, like unemployment benefits. That's like the only two situations that is worse than what it is right now. But I mean, what I found interesting is that he actually take offense when being called poor. Like he thinks that it's insulting, it's embarrassing. Somehow like it hurts his pride if he ever admits to being poor. And that is something that I don't understand. I don't think there's anything wrong to be poor. I think there's a lot of like disadvantages to being poor. But there's nothing wrong to just admit that, hey, I'm poor. And I mean, I grew up in a fucking poor household. And I've been poor for like fucking, the first 30 years of my life. And, it sucks. It sucks to be poor, but there's nothing wrong to admit to yourself or to admit to other people that you're poor. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. There's so many people out there. I mean, I would say like half of the population in the States or like around the world are poor. It's being poor is the being poor is like the normality of this world than anything else. So I don't understand like why he feels so like fucking threatened. Maybe he thinks like it's a threat to his manhood to being poor. I just don't understand it. And I find like for him, it's not like he's not poor, right? If you're a rich person and then someone calls you poor, and maybe yeah, maybe you take that as an insult, but Phil, you are poor. So I just don't understand like why he gets so like worked up when being confronted about his financial situation. Like you are in a very very bad place, and you have been in a very very bad place for a long time. And I don't understand it. I don't understand it, especially from my perspective of being poor for a long time, and I don't feel like there's anything wrong with it. It sucks, but it's not like a personal insult. Um, so that's one thing. And and I think the third point I'm trying to make is, or the third thing I want to talk about is him refusing to admit that he's poor. Is also making him making a lot of like not bad financial choices, but like irresponsible financial choices, and that basically echoes back to his what he said previously about not willing to go to or refusing, quote unquote refusing to go to Walmart. um, you know, I don't understand like what is wrong with going to Walmart. I still go to Walmart. I still go to Walmart. I don't buy their meat because I think their meat quality is really really poor. I don't when I look at their steak sold in Walmart, I don't really know if it's really like real steak or one of those things that like sometimes you hear people like piece different parts of meat together to make them and use glue to glue them together and make the meat look like a real steak, but it's not really a steak. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that's the quality of the meat that I associate with Walmart. But outside of that, I think their vegetables are pretty good. Their snacks are pretty good too. Okay, so you know, like I just don't think there's anything wrong with going to Walmart. But for him, for Phil, he somehow thinks that going to Walmart is 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 like beneath him, right? Like it's like insult or it's embarrassing for someone like him to go to Walmart. But and again, just like him being poor, which we have established that fact, you know, already. I just don't understand like why he would think that going to Walmart is beneath him. First of all, like people, for someone who's in his financial situation, I don't understand like how he thinks going to Walmart is harmful for him. And I would say that, you know, if I were in his financial situation, I would do like fucking everything I can to go to a place where I can purchase like cheaper goods. Okay. And again, back to my own life experience. When I was growing up, like going to Walmart is actually a fancy trip for us. We go to like fucking Dollarama's to buy most of our daily not groceries but daily shoppings. We try to like buy like as fucking anything as cheap as possible. And sometimes we have to go through. I remember my parents would, every weekend they would sit through like all the paper ads in their mailbox, and they say, "Hey, this week this grocery store has a sale on this particular food," and we would go over there, and then we would go, grocery store B, because they have like a sale on this particular food or groceries. Um, so I don't. I'm actually really interested in knowing where Phil purchased his groceries. Um, and you know, every single day he's complaining about like low contributions, low donations from the stream, but at the same time, he's not willing to make the sacrifice to go to like a lower end grocery stores to save money. And it begs the question of like, if you are one of his fans and you are, listening all his like daily rants about, oh, he's in such a bad financial situation, and then constantly begging people to donate money to him, and then you donate your money to him, or to his streams, and you find out that he's not willing to act financially responsible, and refusing to go to Walmart because he thinks that Walmart's for poor people, but the whole reason he's begging for money is because he's poor. I can't really understand his mindset, right? I just find the whole thing very interesting. I find the whole thing still entertaining, but I just, that is something that when I go to like, some online forums, online discussions about him, like people just don't really, notice this. And that's the reason I'm making this video today, because I find it hilarious. Like he's poor, but he refused to admit that he's poor, and he refuses to spend his money in a responsible manner when someone who's in a very poor financial situation. He still thinks that he's very well off financially, and he spends in a way that doesn't really fit his current financial situation, because somehow if he starts to like really uh try to purchase things to save money, it somehow hurts his pride. That's like the only way they can describe it. If it's almost as if he starts to save money, that is beneath him. That is a insult to his somehow personal pride, which I just find is kind of hilarious. Anyways, that's like, again, probably the only video I'm gonna make on this channel in English, and maybe the last time I'm gonna talk about Phil. But I just find something, it's something that people don't really talk about, but I think it's also very interesting about this, his entire personality. All right. All right, I hope you enjoy this video, and you don't have to like, you don't have to share this video, but if you want to drop a comment, let me know what do you think. All right, have a nice day. Bye.